When sharks are brought up or mentioned, many of us mainly picture the larger species, like the tiger and great white sharks, though what most of us know on them is actually a very small slice of their true diversity, with many of them exhibiting very distinct body plans, dietary preferences, and habitats to what we usually think of them having. So, to start off this year's Shark Week, it seems apt therefore to go over just how wide-ranging and diverse they are, before delving into more specific species, many of which that will later be covered are also extinct. To begin broadly, sharks belong to the larger subclass of Elasmobranchii, being distinct from the other elasmobranchs, the superorder Batoidea comprising the rays and scales, and with the chimeras being classified in their own subclass, being holocephali. In the clade of Selachomorpha, sharks are further divided into two superorders, the squalians, the more basal of the two, and the galleons, being supported by recent molecular studies, which from there make up a range of the living shark diversity we see today. The squalians make up about 2/3 of said shark diversity, being mainly characterised by the lacking of traits like the anal fin, suborbital shoals in their skulls, as well as nictitating membranes over their eyes. They comprise of four orders, being the squatiniforms, the angel sharks, the prissiophoriforms, the saw sharks, the squaliforms comprising dogfish, and finally the hexantiforms, comprising of cow and frilled sharks, alongside others. The galleons, while not being as diverse, are definitely among the go-to visual for when we think of sharks, and contain some of the more well-known and charismatic forms as we'll get into. They are formed by the heterodontiforms, the bullheads, eructolobiforms, the carpet sharks, mainly comprising of more benthic forms like the wobbegong and nurse sharks, but also the largest sharks of them all, also being pelagic, the whale sharks. The last two comprise of the carchariniforms, the ground sharks, animals like the blue and tiger sharks, that and the hammerheads, which are distinguished from the other groups by the presence of the generally elongated snouts and a nictitating membrane which helps to shield their eyes, either when they attack or are defending themselves to prevent further harm. The last group are the lamniforms, comprising of the well-known mackerel sharks like the great whites, as well as more unusual members like the megamouth, thresher, and goblin sharks, not to mention the extinct odontids, which includes Megalodon. Of course, a video like this one only covers the very surface of the variety of sharks out there, not to mention all of the extinct ones, so I hope you all learned something new through the upcoming Shark Week videos, and that with all of it, your appreciation will increase from wherever it was beforehand. Frilled sharks are among the more peculiar and out there sharks alive today, and are decent in size too, at about 2 meters in length. Their diversity broadly in the past though was quite a bit more diverse, and as we'll see in this video, got much, much bigger. This is seen in the genus Proteothrinax goliath, which is an aptly named animal that lived during the late Cretaceous in and around the seas that now constitutes the country of Angola. Discovered in 2002 during the beginning stages of the Paleo-Angola project, they were initially assigned to the genus Chlamydocelicus, which the living frilled sharks are a part of, though this would come under revision later on. Because all that we know from them is their teeth, understanding how they differed from living frilled sharks is a puzzle itself, and while seeming difficult, can be resolved both from the structure of said teeth and also where they were found, which also gives some clues as to their behaviour and potential appearance. The main features that distinguishes them from frilled sharks is the more erect and more stout cusps on their side view, which are also larger than their relatives at up to 20mm in height, also having smooth enamel which lacks much in the way of ornamentation. They were later described as their own genus of Rolphodon, the validity of which will be considered shortly, being named in the memory of Dr. Rolf Ludvigsson, a late British Columbian paleontologist. The validity of this naming has been called into question by some circles. Proteothrinax was named as a replacement for the former genus of Thrinax, which was already preoccupied with that of a sawfly by the same name, an unfortunate and all too common trend in paleontology, with that term then being synonymized into Chlamydocelicus in 1990, then being put into the new genus of Rolphodon in 2021, which, considering Proteothrinax was the earlier of the terms before the change in classification, should therefore instead be considered as a senior synonym, though this is yet to be formally picked up on. With the convoluted classification out of the way, Proteothrinax was quite an impressive animal, as mentioned earlier, being estimated to reach lengths of up to 7 meters, making them at least in terms of length larger than living great whites, and meant that given that living frilled sharks are quite the generalists when it comes to diet, it means that because of their size, Proteothrinax could well have gone after larger animals, potentially including juvenile mosasaurs if given the chance. The regions where they've been found, along with their relatives, indicates that the marine environments they were inhabiting were more shallow than expected, at about 100 to 300 meters in depth, which is quite different from living frilled sharks, which prefer regions of between 500 and 1000 meters. Of course, preservation bias may well be a factor to consider, though if this preferred habitat is to be taken as valid, these animals, in living in more clear waters, may well have appeared differently, having more bluish tones and countershading to be able to better ambush their prey in different conditions, which for any paleo artist watching is definitely something to consider when drawing them. Megalodon is far and away the most well-known extinct shark, and for many reasons, its massive size being among the main ones. And yet, with all this attention, it passes many by that they do have quite an extensive list of relatives that go underappreciated in the group they belong to, the Otodontids, and one of the most notable of these animals living under Megalodon's metaphorical shadow is Paratodus, the last of the Megatooths. Known commonly as the false mako or phaco shark, they at least for now are considered as Otodontids, the Megatooth sharks, and comprise the three recognised species. These are the early Eocene P. pavlovi, the middle through late Eocene P. mangischlacensis, and the Miocene through early Pleistocene P. pinnidae, which is the most well known of the three and also the one I'll be talking about mostly from here on. Their teeth, which are found worldwide from New Zealand through to Madagascar and the US, are prized by collectors for their rarity. Given this massive range, it seems therefore that Paratodus was more of a pelagic shark, given that open oceans are seldom represented in terrestrial fossil deposits, and also may be a reason why they survive for longer than their larger relatives. Initially appearing as a smaller shark back in the Eocene, they appear to, over the course of geologic time, increase in size, with the youngest fossils indicating they became one of the largest sharks of their time, estimated in a 1999 study to have measured up to and past 7.6 meters in length, placing them in a similar or larger size range as large orca. The teeth themselves tell an interesting story of their dietary preferences and potential behaviour. The lack of feeding damage seems to show that they mainly preyed on softer-bodied animals, though this has been sceptically considered considering how robust their tooth roots are, which seems more evidence that they were fully capable of attacking larger prey, especially considering how large they could get. Instead of developing blade-like teeth to strip off chunks from their prey, it instead seems that with their large roots and curved crowns, they were grasping and grappling with larger prey, restraining and then killing them. Their survival past that of Megalodon, which died out before them in the preceding Pliocene epoch, seems to be down to both the more generalist diets, allowing them to stave off prey reduction and range shrinkage, considering they were evidently more pelagic than Megalodon were, perhaps allowing them to, at least for a little while longer, stave off the climatic changes through dropping sea levels that were occurring during the time, and, with their eventual extinction, bringing an end to the Megatooth shark lineage. The world's oceans are the biggest environment on Earth, and most of it remains largely empty, at least seemingly, with land in many places being up to thousands of kilometres away. Therefore, the animals that frequent these regions are very specialised to its conditions, and this includes sharks. Among them are the oceanic whitetips, requiem sharks, related to animals like the bull, blacktip, and lemon sharks, which are among the most pelagic, aka open water sharks that there are. Mainly inhabiting tropical and temperate seas, mainly above 20 degrees, but sometimes being found in waters as cool as 15 degrees, they are generally common and widely distributed, though this has changed in recent years, as we'll get into. Regarding their appearance, the most distinguishing traits are their long and wing-like dorsal and pectoral fins, which are both notably a good amount larger and rounder than many other sharks, allowing for increased gliding ability through the water. This helps a lot given their open environment and also helps them to save energy. They are also fairly robust and large-bodied, usually being about 3 meters in length and weighing around 170 kilograms. They are some of the few sharks that must keep swimming to breathe, a group known as the obligate ram ventilators, having to move to get water to flow past their gills to respire, something found in just about 5% of sharks, give or take. Mainly solitary, they will sometimes gather together when food is readily available, mainly taking cephalopods like squids, following other animals like pilot whales to better find them, given how common they are comparatively, though will also take larger animals like stingrays, turtles, various seabirds, as well as young or vulnerable seals and or cetaceans. Scars on their sides, matching those of the size and shape of giant squid, have also been found on some individuals, so it indicates that some are diving deep enough to battle with them. Their expansive habitats often mean so that coming across said food is usually less commonplace than coastal sharks, and are therefore quite opportunistic and aggressive, being described by some as among the most dangerous of all sharks for this reason. They often approach divers with high attitudes and boldness, being very curious and inquisitive, and are likely responsible for a good amount of notable shark attacks. Most notably, after the sinking of the USS Indianapolis in World War II, many of the sailors who didn't survive either died from exposure to the elements or to shark bites, with whitetips believed to have been responsible for most, if not all of the attacks given the region where it happened. Of the roughly 900 in number crew, only 317 ended up surviving in the end, with up to 30 to around 150 being down to the sharks. Other such instances during the time, like that with the RMS Nova Scotia, is also notable, though it's of course worth mentioning that these are freak events, where large groups of sharks congregated to feed when potential food was widely available, and is not a behaviour that would manifest around single or groups of divers unless the latter were to appear next to a group on purpose. If any of you yourselves end up swimming with these sharks, noting aggression is especially important, and the main way to note when they're acting more bold and aggressive is to note their speed and posture. The speed is more erratic and overall faster, with them often swimming in towards divers before then backing off, doing figure-8-like motions while also having their pectoral fins down at a 45-degree angle. Oceanic whitetips are however not doing too well, with them now being considered to be critically endangered, even with their wide range. Their populations have in some places crashed by up to 99% over the course of 50 years, mainly down either for harvesting for their own fins or meat or unintentionally through bycatch. They are protected in some areas like in New Zealand, though going from what were once considered one of the not only most numerous sharks in the oceans, but large animals in general should be a massive wake-up call that our oceans are facing extreme pressures and threats, which are certainly fixable, but only with the necessary political will and policies in place to do so. Snaggletooth sharks, also known as the weasel sharks, which are distinguished today by their rounded snouts and very long gills, are also notable for their mouths, where they contain a good number of strongly hooked, cusp-like and serrated teeth, which protrude when said mouths are closed. While the genus that they belong to, Hemipristis, is today only represented by this living species, Hemipristis elongata, there were once others, the most notable being Hemipristis cera, otherwise known colloquially as the wolverine shark, which comes from them being a good deal larger than their living relative, and wolverines, which are of course a good deal larger than weasels, ties into this notion. Described interestingly enough before their living relative in 1843, the living weasel sharks being described in 1871 from their teeth. A skeleton of the former was found in 2014 up in Maryland, being around 15 million years in age, placing them in the Miocene epoch. With over 80 vertebrae being found, this lies up to the shark's skull, something very rare considering their fragile cartilaginous skeletons, which don't fossilise too well. The shark was determined to be around 6 to 7 metres long, bigger than the largest recorded great whites, and 3 times bigger than their living relative, meaning that they would have been very impressive animals when they were alive themselves, being the largest known carchariform or ground shark. This allowed them to be quite the fearsome predators, certainly against other fish and marine mammals, and this ties them into Megalodon in quite the interesting way. Megalodon pups were apparently born in sites which are today recognised as shallow water coastal nurseries, where they would have spent their first years of life. Newborn Megalodon were already large animals at about 2 metres in length, but even so, this was definitely among the size range of prey that Hemipristis could have targeted. Hemipristis' presence in these areas have been confirmed through their teeth being present, alongside other large sharks like the great hammerhead, which meant that baby Megalodon, before becoming among the largest carnivores ever, had to contend with some pretty formidable predators before they themselves could be dominant. When catching an animal like a baby Megalodon or any other such animal, Hemipristis' teeth were very well designed for such tasks, having interestingly slimmer pointed teeth in their lower jaw while having broader, more triangular ones in the upper jaw. This arrangement allows for the lower teeth to function as piercing tools to hold prey in place, while the upper teeth then saw through with their broader serrations, allowing them to remove and eat big chunks of flesh very effectively. The teeth were considered so different from each other that it was once thought that the respective top and lower teeth belonged to 2 different animals, though this was later rectified when more complete jaw sets were found. The extinct wolverine shark also differs from the living weasel shark dentition-wise in having less numerous serrations of the upper teeth in that of the modern species. While surviving for a good length of time, even past that of Megalodon themselves, these sharks eventually became extinct around 1 million years ago. Last being found around the Gulf of Mexico, their disappearance likely being down predominantly to the cooling global temperatures that were occurring around the time. Either way, despite their extinction, the wolverine sharks were very interesting animals, and ones in the present day are sorely missed for how awesome it would have been to see them in action. slowly swimming through the freezing waters of the North Atlantic around Canada and Northern Europe. Greenland sharks are peculiar cigar or sausage-shaped animals that live their lives largely in the dark, not just because of their environment, but also from copepods, small crustaceans that attach to their eyes and make them blind. Not that it matters too much to the sharks, given that they can still get around well through both their smell and hearing. This slow and methodical lifestyle, where they mostly scavenge in the cold environments they inhabit, has led them to have a very slow growth rate, along with gestation periods. Growing at a rate of about 0.5 to 1 centimetre a year, and in some cases having a pregnancy of about 10 pups lasting a good 18 years, it was evident for a good while that these animals were quite long-lived, though the extent was for a long while quite hard to pin down. It's been hard to do for a variety of reasons, one of them being that the waters in where they live are often hard to access, having low levels of travel through them, and given the depths at which they live, gaining information on them is often very difficult. The information we do often glean from them often only comes up from individuals that turn up as bycatch in trawl nets or longlines. There is also something about their biology that makes it hard to determine anything concrete. Since being cartilaginous fish, they lack otoliths, the bones of the inner ear in bony fish which grow like rings, allowing for their age to be accurately determined by counting them. Because of this, and lacking the solid bones to easily mark their age, it was only till very recently that we could understand more on the specifics of their longevity. Instead, scientists turned to another potential technique, one used by 3 Danish scientists, Jan Heinemeyer, John Stephenson and Julius Nielsen, who in 2008 published a paper on lens crystallines, a group of proteins which are found in the human eye. For some background, like all other organic molecules, these crystallines contain carbon, which includes trace amounts of the radioactive isotope carbon-14. Unlike other proteins, which undergo constant recycling and replenishment, these crystallines on the other hand remain stable throughout a person's life, with them being present since birth and being a prenatal artifact present before both our and other animals' births. Utilising bycatch from fishermen, a team of scientists managed to obtain samples from 28 sharks, ranging from 81 centimetres to just over 5 metres, which were collected during expeditions to Greenland between 2010 and 2013. To make the results more accurate, the study they would later publish in 2016 also utilised something you wouldn't really consider, and that was looking at atomic bombs, or at least their lingering presence in the environment. After the heavy testing of thermonuclear weapons back in the 50s and 60s, there was a huge spike in carbon-14 generated from their use, something known as a bomb pulse, which because of the spike, can be measured in the shark's eyes. The fallout from the bombs used since the 50s nearly doubled the concentration of 14 carbon/12 carbon in the Earth's atmosphere, and although temporary, the radioactive 14 carbon isotope didn't disappear, instead moving from the atmosphere and then settling and mixing with other carbon reserves found on land and also in the oceans. With this at hand, the short period of rapid radiocarbon increase became evident as something that could be analysed in establishing a timestamp for their age validation, with the radiocarbon from the bombs being incorporated into the tissues of all living things born after the bomb pulse, which then acts as a biomarker for age, given the tissues of the animals born beforehand look very different. After calibrating the data, the team estimated an incredibly high average age for one individual as about 392 years, give or take 120. So could well have been over 512, meaning this older individual could well have been born anywhere from 1618 to as early as 1498. So at least from this older estimate, this particular animal was swimming around well before the Declaration of Independence in the United States, being older than the whole nation state, as well as being alive at the same time as Leonardo da Vinci, with there being a whole bunch of other fascinating examples to bring up. Alongside this impressive age range, it was also estimated that these animals reach sexual maturity at around 150, which makes for an exceptionally long period of adolescence. This long and slow life does however make them especially vulnerable to us, given they used to be intensively fished in the past, as their livers were both a big source of vitamin A and also for lamp oil. Not only that, but during World War II, it was also found that the livers also provided an extremely durable machine lubricant, so they were further hunted in large numbers before a synthetic alternative was found. With how long they can live, it's safe to assume that many of the larger and especially older animals were killed off during this point, some of which were potentially alive in the 1420s, and therefore led to their populations likely not completely rebounding since then. Today, the population has been mostly found to consist of subadults, meaning many of them have decades to up to a century to go in order to mature and breed, making them vulnerable. Considering they're an Arctic species, anthropogenic climate change is especially a very big threat to them considering the fragility of their environments, with a good number still either being caught today either for food in areas like Iceland or as bycatch from time to time. Given that the mechanisms that build up their metabolism remain largely unknown and under studies, this means it's all the more important to learn more about them, and how the changes they will certainly face in the coming years and decades will impact them. Megalodon, a genus of shark known by many even outside of paleontology circles, is certainly a very impressive animal and remains firmly entrenched as one of the most well-known extinct animals, at least publicly. Scientifically speaking though, Megalodon, in having a cartilaginous skeleton like other sharks, has meant that over the years, piecing together and estimating both their appearance, size, and adaptations has proved rather difficult to sort out. This has meant that over the years, falsehoods and misconceptions about them have popped up here and there. That, alongside unusual ideas about them still living today, muddy the waters, so to speak, on how we understand them. However, more recently, increased research into them and their habits, ecology, proportions, and also their size, has made an ever clearer picture of how they appeared and acted in life than ever before, with some very interesting results to be noted. To begin, and to address one of the more frequently asked questions, just how big do these sharks actually get? It's, well, quite a varied and often heated discussion surrounding them, with there having been varying estimates based on many different models and comparisons with other extinct and also living sharks. To advance forwards in understanding their overall size, it is most important first and foremost to determine their closest relatives, as this allows us to better understand their proportions and in turn, their overall shape and body mass. Megalodon belong to a group of sharks known as the Oceanodontids or Megatooth sharks, living from around 23 to 2.6 million years ago, from the early Miocene through to the Pliocene, which have been found to group under the order of lamniforms, otherwise known as the mackerel sharks. Getting into further specifics, they clays most closely out of all the living sharks with the lamnids, sharks like the great white and mako, as well as the salmon and porbeagle sharks. This relationship has recently led to the two families being included in a sister group relationship under the superfamily of Lamnoidea, something which is supported by their similarities of regional endothermy, rostral cartilage anatomy, as well as their tooth morphology. Alongside exceptionally well-preserved remains found of their likely ancestor, Creta lamna, which bears strong similarities to salmon and porbeagle sharks in proportion, the latter being the most basal lamnids, and the one that likely gives us the best glimpse into what basal odontodontids appeared like. It therefore makes it much easier to extrapolate in reconstructing Megalodon's life appearance. Plotting out their proportions is in many ways easier to manage and discuss than many dinosaurs, since sharks have very rigid and fixed body plans in comparison, with newborn and juvenile sharks beginning and continuing to grow with the same proportions as their eventual adults and mature form. This therefore makes it a lot easier to take from the growth curves of modern sharks to project them onto extinct taxa like Megalodon, something which is helped by the existence of more complete fossils from their relatives, as well as from animals both more basal and derived than them to look to. A recent study in 2020 set out to determine their body dimensions through comparisons with a select grouping of modern analogues, also factoring in the variability of body dimension averages. Of the 15 living lamniforms, the group of sharks closest to Megalodon, 5 were assessed as being the closest to them based on their dental, ecological, and physiological similarities. These sharks were determined to be the short fin and long fin mako sharks, alongside the salmon and porbeagle sharks, alongside the great whites, something which is very clear given their previously established close relationship. Using computer modelling and assessing their tooth measurements and known vertebrae to living sharks and how they match up, the resulting calculations from the study found an average total length of about 16 metres, which was markedly larger than previous estimates for the specimen used, being IRSNB 9893, which is considered as a general average size for an adult Megalodon, also having a weight of around 61.5 tonnes. This would make them confidently the largest shark known, either alive or extinct, and gives them some very interesting proportions. A Megalodon of the size discussed would have had a head about 4.5 metres long and a dorsal fin around 1.6 metres tall, meaning a good chunk of us wouldn't even be as tall as it, even when standing on their back. And this isn't even as big as they could have got, as other estimates for larger individuals have also been provided in recent years. Isolated vertebrae and teeth from other individuals paint a picture of extremely large animals, among the largest in fact that the oceans have ever seen. One such Megalodon specimen has been estimated at about 20 metres in length, with an extrapolated weight anywhere from 103 to 122 tonnes, comparable to average blue whales in mass in some parts of the world. The upper limit sharks can reach, as seen from time to time in whale sharks, makos and great whites to provide examples, can be a good deal bigger than what is often on record, and that certainly could have applied to Megalodon as well. In terms of their movement and speed, despite being as large as they were just talked about, They were very impressive and fast swimmers, being a good deal faster than what was previously considered. Given their close relation to the lamniforms, animals that are regionally endothermic, able to create and regulate their own heat. It therefore tracks that Megalodon, on the basis of geographical data on where they lived and the water temperatures present, were likely the same, keeping certain areas of their body at higher temperatures than the surrounding water by means of a vascular countercurrent heat exchange system that saw specialised thermogenic organs. This adaptation would have enabled Megalodons to be quite the active animals, with them being estimated to have an estimated cruising speed of about 1.3 to 1.4 meters per second, faster than all the extant species assessed in the study where they were analysed. Their burst speeds, whereby the sharks, like their living relatives, accelerate to catch their prey off guard in an ambush, was also very impressive, able to charge forward at a speed of an estimated 10 meters per second, which, to put it in perspective, sailfish at their maximum speeds are estimated at about 8.3, and barracuda, also renowned for their speeds, being estimated at 6.2. Their ability to cruise at such speeds would have enabled them to traverse great distances, which would have increased their ability to encounter prey, which, given that modern great whites can travel as far as 11,000 kilometers across oceans, Megalodon would have certainly been able to do the same. This ability to move between feeding sites also leads them to having an interesting, but often underappreciated and little known ecological role, as today, large and highly mobile animals have the effect to drive nutrient movements across marine regions, having a key role in global nutrient transfer in the oceans. Their extinction, therefore, not only affected the cetacean populations that lived alongside them, freeing them up from such a large predatory pressure, but also greatly affected food webs, nutrient transports, as mentioned earlier, which therefore impacted ocean productivity and ecosystem stability along with it. Megalodon's role in the Miocene through Pliocene food webs is certainly very impressive as well, as it seems they occupied a trophic niche not currently filled by any ocean-going animal alive today, being a super predator that would regularly prey on animals as large as modern apex predators, which would have allowed them to both minimise competition as well as being able to acquire substantial amounts of energy to fuel their long migrations. Megalodon jaws were so large that based on their size, a 16-metre individual can eat an orca, or at least an animal as big as one, in just 5 bites, which would have certainly been a lower number if this was a 20-metre Megalodon. Such pressure on these otherwise apex predators led to an interesting dynamic forming between the predatory whales that lived alongside Megalodon and their lifespans, which correlated with said pressure in an interesting way. Teeth from Physeteroids, the group which includes living sperm whales, was much more diverse back during when Megalodon was alive, and were also very formidable predators in their own right, many of them orca-sized and having a full set of impressive dentition, enabling them to go after many coastal and ocean-going animals, something confirmed by the wear facets on their teeth. Because their teeth grew continuously over the course of their life and weren't replaced, counting the rates of their growth through looking over lower groups can be used to determine their age and when they died. Many of the largest teeth revealed something peculiar, that these animals rarely exceeded 20 years of age, which is significantly shorter than the typical 65 plus years seen in their modern relatives, as well as amongst other dolphins and whales, more comparable to belugas than any other group. They also grew very rapidly, which is in stark contrast to many cetaceans, which appears to reflect the environmental conditions and pressures under which they were under. Miocene through Pliocene oceans were especially productive, and with this came more resources for larger predators like Megalodon to exploit, which on a food web scale placed more pressure on other predators to adapt, with said whales having to quickly mature and grow to breed to keep up their populations when animals like Megalodon were around to prey on them, as the more slower paced breeding and growth of other cetaceans would not have been able to suffice with such predation pressures placed upon them, which explains how after Megalodon's extinction, the trend towards slower life histories became more apparent thereafter. The growth pattern seen in these raptorial sperm whales is also seen to an extent in Megalodon, whereby they have a growth rate nearly 2 times that of great whites, but having a delayed sexual maturity that showed that they had a slowing of their somatic growth by around 25 years of age. Based on known neonates or newborn fossils from them, Megalodon were born already large, being about 2 meters long and already 120 kilograms in weight, something seen today in their living relatives, which give birth to live young, with them able to reach ages anywhere from 88 to 100 years based on analysis of their vertebrae and the fossilized layers of bone tissue added year upon year. This growth rate of about 16 centimeters a year for at least the first 46 meant that even young Megalodon would have been quite formidable, with there even being evidence of their predation on much larger animals. A bite mark on a humpback-sized whale was determined to have come from a Megalodon of about 4 to 8 meters in size, with such predation events also being known from great whites, where they'll attempt to feed on weakened or ill whales on their migrations. To sustain their massive sizes, it figures that Megalodon would have had to have eaten a huge amount of food to keep going, and that certainly appears to be the case, needing a huge, estimated 98,000 calories a day. Their ability to store the nutrients they obtain from their food was found to be quite impressive, something which is assisted by the high levels of calories in whale blubber, as it's been found that the consumption of a cetacean the size of an orca would sustain a 60-metre Megalodon for about 63 days without jeopardising population survival. Altogether though, their preference for, and also the ability to consume such large prey, would have allowed Megalodon to not only exploit less competitive niches, but also enabling transoceanic movements, having a strong effect on the trophic webs of the world's oceans. Their bite force is very impressive too, with them being so powerful and forceful that they would have been able to destroy their own teeth in the process, having a bite force of up to 180,000 newtons, or equivalent to having 18 tons of force laid on top of you all at once. Their jaw muscles alone weighed as much as an adult cow, which gave their massive and iconic jaws their power. T-Rex, for a reference, had an estimated bite force of about 35,000 newtons. Such powerful bites, if they found their targets, would cripple even the very largest of animals, with them being able to take out 3 tons of flesh in a single bite when estimating from a 20-metre specimen, an attack fully capable of killing a living adult fin or blue whale of today. The scale of their jaws really are immense, enough to fit about 5 or so people in their mouth at once, which would have given them the gape to fully engulf an aforementioned T-Rex in one go, though they of course never coexisted. Their large teeth, while also being very impressive fossils, and fairly common ones at that, have also served a practical purpose throughout history, one such notable case being a tooth found in an altar being found in an ancient Mayan city, whereby the chips and worn down serrations on one side, suggesting that it was used as some form of cutting tool. It may have also been an offering to the Palanquin gods of G1, the native name being unknown, who was often depicted with fins and a single triangular tooth, likely being based off of Megalodon themselves. In finishing off this video, it's pretty clear to see that Megalodon was not just a big shark, but a very interesting animal that had enormous impacts on the ecologies of the environments they lived in, shaping the population dynamics and life histories of many of the species they lived alongside, as well as also having some unique attributes that distinguishes them from their living relatives. This is certainly not the last time I'll be talking about them and their relatives either, as topics such as their evolutionary history, competitors, and extinction are all things I want to get to at some point down the line, and to keep this video somewhat shorter, I'll be covering them later on. And there we go, thanks for watching this compilation video. To clear some things up, this compilation video from last year's Shark Week, even though they're already on their own playlist individually, was intended as a bit of a refresh to get you guys back into the mindset of all things shark for this year's 2024 Shark Week here on the channel, and also for some of you who may not have seen the videos that I put out last year, so altogether, it's a good refresher either way. Getting into what will be happening from here on, I'm quite proud of the roster for this year's Shark Week, and I can't wait to share it with you guys, for there are a ton of really interesting groups and topics that really are yet to be talked about much in detail here on YouTube. The videos will, as long as things go to plan, come out daily from the 15th through to the 21st of July, and I'll keep you all updated with progress on them as time goes on. Until then though, if you made it to this part of the video, thank you for watching through this blast from the past, and I look forward to providing the next set of videos on these amazing animals, both extinct and extant, for all of you to enjoy. With that, I'll see you next time, whenever that may be.